This is a team we're going to talk about a lot, I think, throughout the season and on the show. And it's unfortunately because I think I'm going to be betting them a lot because they're terrible. It's the Philadelphia Flyers. Their over under is 73.5. They had 61 points last season, and I think they're worse. Like I can't get. I don't know who's betting the over 73.5 on this team.
I don't think there's many. I think there's a lot of flaws, and obviously the news about Couturier, he would have been their top line center and is a huge piece. He's going to miss a notable amount of time, and it sounds like Ryan Ellis isn't going to play at all this season, which leaves a really thin unit behind. It's a pretty bad looking Flyers team, especially with the division. If the Devils are better, the Islanders are better, they're going to be fighting hard to get to that point total. So yeah, completely with you on this one.
I mean, and we'll like I said, we'll talk about the Flyers a little bit later in the show as well. But it sucks betting an under on a Tortorella team because there's no hiding on a Tortorella team. You can't coast. You can't take 2 weeks off. Like if you're going on that Western Canadian swing or the Southeast swing in the United States, like he's going to eat you alive if you take a game off. So just through that effort, like the floor is a little bit higher than it would be if we had a different coach here, I think. But still that number is, I mean, it's 73.5, which is low, but that's 13 points higher they would need to be than they were last year. And I think they're actually significantly worse. Another one I want to talk about are the Florida Panthers. This is another team we'll talk about in a little bit more. There's just too many question marks. I think that this team is being priced like they're like the team that we saw last season, or a team that should make a natural progression from the team that we saw last season. I don't think it's going to be all that linear with this side. We recorded we have a NHL awards betting preview show coming out on Wednesday where we talk about Vezina Trophy, and I actually like Spencer Knight in that market because I think if the Panthers do get to this point total, which I think is way too high, Knight would have to have a great season. So if you do want to invest in the Panthers, I think that's one way to do it. But the defense is worse without Mackenzie Weegar. Who knows with the goaltending, and they have to adjust to a new coach, Paul Maurice, who I think is a fine NHL coach, but he's not going to be the type of guy I think that can just take a team like this, which has plenty of talent and creative players, and turn it and unlock it is what I'm trying to say.
For sure. And I think, their defense looks really suspect. Like, I think it's without last season, it would probably even calling attention to it a little more. And then another flaw for them this year is going to be, it could be hard to replace any bodies they need because they've given up all their first round picks for the next couple of years. They've given up a ton of assets. So, if some of this stuff doesn't pan out that they need to, it's going to be hard to bring in replacements, or a lot harder than you'd like. And especially for some of these competing teams, we know they're going to be able to work hard to bring these guys in, whereas the Panthers aren't going to really match any of these offers with no firsts moving forward.
And I talked about the Capitals a little bit, or a lot, as a Stanley Cup play. You like the over here, and you have a couple other ones you want to discuss.
Yeah, I like the over on the Caps at, what did I put, 94.5. Yeah, so sorry, I like the over on the Caps there. I think this team has just been so consistent in the regular season. The veterans are really good at coming out of the gates, getting a good start. They've had good starts very consistently over the last 5 years, and every year under Laviolette, which is obviously a huge part of making the postseason and beating this number. Which I'd rather play this to make playoffs is minus 150. I'd much rather play this number at close to 2-1 than that. And I just think it's really likely with Kemper coming in, going to provide more steady goaltending. The decor is still going to be solid. I think that this is a really good play on the over.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if it depends on how you want to attack the Capitals, whether it's the Stanley Cup market overs, like it's just a team that you should invest in because the rest of the world just seems to have forgotten about them a little bit, like to moved on. And everyone seems to agree this team's too old, like without considering the fact that they kind of got younger in the offseason.
Like, I think their floor is a lot better than people are saying. It's hard for me to see them being bad. Obviously, I'm very, favorable to them, but at the same time, I've seen it year in and year out. They come in really prepared and have a really consistent work rate. And I think, at least with regards to the regular season, I feel pretty confident that we can trust, they're going to play up to expectations. And I think they'll be a playoff team again with pretty level of confidence.
And to kind of marry this point with a team that I like the under on, which is the Pittsburgh Penguins, they're the Capitals are 94.5. The Penguins are 101.5. I think that the Capitals might be better than Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's half the cup odds, 7 points higher in the over under market. I say this every season and I end up paying for it, which is the Penguins, I think, are not a bad bet to miss the playoffs. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but at some point, Mike Sullivan's such a good coach, and that's part of the problem with this bet, and why I hate it, but I hate making it. But at some point, he's just not going to be able to work his magic when Crosby and Malkin and Letang are out of the lineup, because they just are going to be you can feel pretty confident now that you're not going to get 80 games out of those three players. Jake Gensel's a great player behind them, but then after that, the drop off is pretty significant. So this is an old team. The goaltending, I still have question marks with Tristan Jarry. I know he was really good in the regular season last year, but he was really bad in the regular season before that. Casey DeSmith, he's your run-of-the-mill NHL backup. He'll be good one night, he'll be bad the next. So there's too many ways, there's too many paths to failure with this over-under. So I like the Penguins under 101.5. That will probably be my last total. Wow, what do you have left?
I would have the Bruins over 95.5. If you wanted another one to play, I think that's really reasonable. I know you're high on the Bruins as well. They're going to be fighting through those injuries early on in the year. So I think if you did, I could see the logic if you were someone who liked the Bruins and felt like maybe you wanted to wait and consider a cup future later on in the year. But I think 95.5 is just a little too low for how many things we know about that team are still going to be really solid. They have such a strong core of veterans who are just elite players in this league. They're still going to have a really good goaltender and Swayman, a good duo altogether, which should help rack up some points. And then, I think if Florida take a step back as well, I'm expecting that's going to help them to an extent. So I think over 95.5 is a pretty safe bet for the Bruins.